when you're going back, I mean, like you said, there's only a couple ingredients basically. How are you going back and tweaking this? Like, is it less gunpowder? Like what?
So this is the fun part, right? You can tweak the weight of the projectile to get what you're looking for, and it's more easy.
And I'm sure
that's done more on rifles than it is on handguns.
Oh, I'm sure just by a tiny bit, it changes everything.
It does. It depends on the material that you use too for how it flies through the air. You have coefficients of frictional force. So there's lots of math that go with it. At that point, we were loading, I think it was like 12 or 14 different calibers, and then like 2 or 3 different projectiles per caliber. So like 9mm, we were loading 115 grain, 124, and 147 grain.
So the weight
of the bullet.
Itself.
115, 124, and 147. 3 different ones, so that's 3 different powder charges for each one, so you really have to dial in at each time. So World War II had a really interesting fake army, the ghost army of World War II. Their job was to con or deceive the Germans in like 3 methods. It's sonic, visual, and radio.
Welcome to the Chris Salerno Show, your go-to for real estate, business, health, and family insight. I'm Chris Salerno, CEO of QC Capital. Each episode, we explore the latest trends and expert advice from industry leaders. Whether you're an investor, entrepreneur, or seeking balance, this show provides an inspiration you need. Join us and elevate your game on the Chris Salerno Show. Welcome to the Chris Salerno Show. I'm your host, Chris Salerno. I have a good friend, Joshua, on here. We have cigars together, and we met through a mutual friend. And ever since then, we've always connected and bonded. He's a wealth of knowledge, so you guys are going to receive a lot today. Also, if you've seen the movie War Dogs, it's going to be a little bit of that too, with some explanations. And you'll know what I mean when we get through this episode. So I want to introduce good friend, Joshua. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Excited to get everyone to hear about your background, because when we have cigars, we're always talking business and things like that, and I've got to know you, what is it, 2 years, a year now?
Yeah,
about 2 years.
Almost 3.
Oh my, time flies, man. Time flies when you're loving life, and we came together through a mutual friend at a lunch, and we hit it off very well, and we're like, hey, let's go grab cigars, and ever since then, you know, we always talk on about a weekly basis unless we're traveling. So I want everyone to hear your story because it's very unique. It's very interesting. Your mindset on how you operate, I love. Let's go all the way back to childhood days. Okay. You know, we're going to talk from childhood days. Let's walk us through, you know, your childhood, where were you born, things like that.
So I'm one of those unique ones. I've got a few citizenships because I was actually not born here. Even though I'm an American citizen by birth because my mom was, so it's called Juris blood, right? Okay. So I was actually born in Canada, in Toronto, and to a U.S. citizen, and my father, who is Israeli and Canadian. So we lived in Toronto, and we moved around quite a bit. My dad is actually was extremely brilliant. One of the smartest men I've ever known in my entire life. And unfortunate for you, you get kind of the dumb Avitan today. But because of his genius, we kind of moved around. So 2 countries, and I've lived both East Coast and West Coast as a kid, and Midwest. So starting the story, it was Toronto, and then to Vancouver to Atlanta, and Atlanta to California, California back to Atlanta, Atlanta to New York to Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, back to Atlanta, and then from around there. So got to kind of see the entirety of this country and kind of got to grow up born in the 80s and grew up in the 90s. So it's kind of an interesting time.
And those were the good years too.
Yeah, they were fun and interesting. So anyways, following Dad's story. So my father was in the military, so as you said, I had an interesting background. I love firearms, and that's kind of what leads us up to today. Oh, yeah. If we will. So as we moved around, Dad always, had firearms and showed us how to use them safely. And my brother and I, he was born in Atlanta, so kind of we're all in different countries, born in different countries, if you will.
And that's one thing that we talked about is, and I have a son, 4.5, going on 25, and you have kids as well. And that's one thing that we talked about is making sure that our kids know what a firearm is, how to handle it properly, especially when they start getting older, how to handle it properly, cutting out that curiosity. you know, because I think a lot of parents don't cut that out right away, and that's when bad things happen, you know. And I think it's super important to get the kids understanding of what the firearm is and be comfortable with it.
And actually, that's part of my mindset too. If you're looking at it, is education dissuades fear, right? Because fear is kind of like that mind killer.
Yeah,
and the more you know, the more you can kind of dissuade that, because you learn to use things safely. So that's where we grew up with that. And I was in the Midwest at that time. So big guns, handguns, and I kind of wanted to test my hand at hunting. And Midwest hunting is a little different than it is here. It's
what were you hunting for?
Stock hunting, elk.
Elk, okay.
So
is elk good? I've never had elk.
Yeah, it's really good. Actually.
Really? Yeah, I've never held it. I'll have to put it on the bucket list.
Yeah. So my father actually really wasn't a hunter. So I got to learn through family friends and, Sioux Indian. So they kind of had this whole ritual with going out to the hunt and all of that. And it actually started with like zeroing in and creating your own ammunition for your rifle. Yeah. So I started with a Remington 700. And they showed me kind of how to load different powders and different projectiles until we got it to where like a 13-year-old kid could actually handle the recoil of a 308 comfortably and then at distance. So I kind of learned ballistics really young, like at that age. And that was fascinating to me more so than the rest of that.
Yeah.
So kind of flash forward going from there. Still moving around and learning different areas of the country, going to university, still keeping like shooting as a hobby.
What'd you study at university?
Oh, so once again, another interesting one. I had 2 degrees in undergrad, and then I went to law school. So I started with biology.
Oh, biology whooped my butt. I went to go pre-med biology. Biology whooped my butt, and chemistry did. So I switched to business entrepreneurship, and then I dropped out and ran into real estate and grew businesses.
Yeah, those were the weed out classes. I went to UGA, so like biochem and genetics and organic chemistry would kill you. And I actually excelled at those. I didn't understand the early chemistry because I had questions about how we got to these numbers, and they're like, "Don't worry about it.
That's just how we did it."
You use.
But it's like, no, like how did we get to it?
And organic chemistry taught me that, so I was really excited to get those. And then I discovered summer school. I was like, oh, so I can take like the really hard classes over summer break. It's just like one.
Yeah.
And there's nobody in Athens. It's great. So that's what I did.
Yeah, Athens is definitely in the middle of nowhere, basically.
It's the best college town there is, period.
Yeah, it is. I've been there a couple times. Went to their football camp there. Phenomenal campus. Yep. Beautiful campus. Beautiful atmosphere. Everything.
Yeah, they get a ton of money for campus beautification every year. It's a really great place to go to school. So, as I'm going through there, my guidance counselor.
What made you want to do biology?
So, honestly, I was going to go and be a patent attorney. So I needed a science degree a science or an engineering degree in order to become a patent attorney.
What made you want to be, hey, I want to do patent attorney? Right, so out of all the law you can practice.
Well, once again, my father being as brilliant as he was, having a PhD in electrical engineering, also invented quite a bit of things. So he had 60 U.S. patents and 45 international patents, all for forklifts and designs and controls. So, listen, brilliant man. So
you got around patents very early,
and I got to see the creation from beginning to end.
So his engineering mind was designing all this, patenting it, and then you saw that process.
Yeah, and he was very much of a Renaissance man. So he was also a pilot too. So we had an airplane growing up, but not like what you think. It's like a single engine.
You're not talking about a Gulfstream?
No, we're talking like 1978 Beechcraft Bonanza V-tail, 5-seaters with the jump seat in the back.
And there you go.
But you get to fly in the Midwest to go to flapjacks.
Okay.
So really exposed to lots of machines through my dad, and he always took my brother and I with him. So on the weekends, while he's designing things for whatever company he was working for, we would go to the factory with him. So we got to see that. And then when he was general manager of his own factory, we were there every weekend, kind of after school. So my brother and I would work maintenance in the factory and also help with marketing and a few other things, and got to see like top down how this worked.
You got to see the business side of it.
Yep.
Really the nitty gritty, everything.
Literally cutting out the metal frames and bending them and painting to putting together entire forklifts all the way through how they run their marketing and sales.
Wow. So you really got to see the whole hands-on from it.
All of it, how the sausage was made from beginning to end. And Dad being who he was, we also had like 2 or 3 failed ventures, like one in New York and one in Iowa.
You're always going to have that.
In the garage.
You need to have that for experience. You need to go through that failure for experience.
And he did. Like, it was kind of funny. So I remember we had, it was a remote control lawnmower.
Okay.
Like back in the day that didn't really work, but kind of worked.
Well, you know, now they have basically lawnmower drones.
Oh, yeah, big ones. So he was doing that back in the early 90s.
Unbelievable.
And then there was
people thought he was
racer.
Crazy back then.
Yeah.
When he'd go pitch a remote control lawnmower.
But but still forklifts were his big thing. So getting to see those whole processes and then dealing with a bunch of patent attorneys. Kind of like that's where I felt I wanted to be. So needing the science degree and then going in and they're like, oh, you're going to graduate early. I'm like, no. I was like, you need to figure this out. Because staying longer.
Because you took all the summer classes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they said you're going to graduate early.
Yeah. And I was
but you didn't want to?
No, it was like 3. I was in. It was like 2.5 years, and I was going to graduate. Like by the end, I was like, that's not happening.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So you wanted to stay longer?
Yep. So I picked up philosophy as another degree, and then it went to like 4.5 years. I couldn't stretch it any longer. And then applied to law school. So
wow, how was law school?
Oh God, it's insane.
Everyone says it's a pain, especially passing the bar.
Yeah, I never actually went that far.
There you
after
go.
Going through law school, I realized I never wanted to be a lawyer at that point. But what it did is it gave me really, really great experience on understanding contracts and how things work property-wise. Also, it gave me the depth of knowledge that I needed to do what I did going forward for consulting, right? Yeah. Law school taught me how to do not just like LexisNexis case law, legal research, but also like book law research, like how to go find exactly everything that you're looking for. And that's truly helpful. You don't need to know every single answer to every question, but you do need to know where to locate it to find the answer. Yeah. And that's always been, I guess, my key and secret to success.
I love that.
Is understanding that.
Yeah, and I think it's super important because you're not going to know every answer to any question, things like that, or information that you may need. You know, thankfully we have ChatGPT that brings a lot today, but I still think Google is going to definitely excel because of the information that is on there and how deep you can go with it.
Yeah, and same reason I also keep like handwritten notes on things that I'm researching and looking at, right? Because you're never going to retain 100% of that information, so at least that's why I wrote it down. I don't have to remember it. I know where to go find it.
100%. So said no. Law school, doing it. Leaving law school. What was those next things?
So next step was I went to be a banker, and I also helped my dad, who was an expert witness at that time. So he was at that time he was living in Atlanta, and I moved back, and he needed some help with his one-man company. It was Avitan and Associates. He was an expert witness and a forensic engineer. So if like a house or a building burnt down, the defense or prosecution would hire him, and he would go figure out how that would happen and then write a report. But like going through there, since I was fresh out of law school looking at it, he's like, I need help creating timelines. So him showing me how to read through like 1,000+ page depositions of 8 or 9 people and creating a timeline of how events happen is also more in line with training that I needed to. So like learning that, I took those to banking side, and I did compensatory fees. So back it was like 2010, I want to say 2011, where the banks had that like crash after the real estate bubble kind of deal, and they were loaning out a lot of money. And Countrywide was taken over by Bank of America, and we had no idea whose fault was what kind of deal. Yeah. So I was.
They were lending to everybody.
Yep.
Everyone and their mom.
I was part of the team that helped Bank of America figure out with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac what portions of these bad loans we're responsible for and which portions they're responsible for.
So you basically do a timeline.
Pretty much of looking at, hey, this is when we're supposed to contact you within the guidelines of the law that we're sitting here, and rule it out that way.
Wow.
So, yeah, intense. And then from there, they kind of moved me to AML, BSA, so money laundering, and then Reg Z and all of those. And I'm probably one of the few people who've been on both sides of AML
Holy
for the banks,
cow.
and where they're like, hey, this is money laundering. We're like, no, it is not, actually. And because I'm a timeline and checklist guy, here's all your paperwork.
Wow, unbelievable. I'm sure you saw some crazy things.
Yeah. So,
and I mean, that's money laundering is huge these days still.
It's insane.
It's I'm shocked on how large it is that people, even in other countries like Singapore and things like that, how people are just trying to clean money.
It's incredible, and it's pervasive through every market.
And I think definitely crypto has not helped that. You know,
if anything,
it's
made it
worse. Yeah, because it's you really can't track it. You know, you just bought crypto and that's it. Like you really can't track it.
And then you lose your coin wallet number. You've lost those. And
you got to be careful.
Who's stealing that at this point, right?
I know. Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very, very interesting. So really got a lot of experience in that banking world. And I think that's something that we connected so closely on when we were at lunch that one time. Really asking the right type of questions because you ask very strategic questions on operations systems. You do that timeline in your mind. And I've gotten to know that.
It's getting to why. Right, is what I've learned, is like kind of the why. Once we figure out the why, kind of the rest falls into place of how we can work together and knock that out. And I enjoy those questions.
Yeah. So how long was that total run in the banking industry?
So I did that till for 3 years. So 2013, I kind of I was tired and burnt out of doing that, and I had a little bit of money. I figured I could start whatever I wanted. Yeah. And I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. And I had a really good friend who was going through a bad divorce, and he was looking for something else to do. They're great.
Yeah, I know.
So I was like, hey, why don't you come up? I'm trying to figure out what we want to do. And Mike is a long-term buddy of mine. I've known him since we were 13 years old. Yeah. And so he and I have always, once again, bringing full swing back into shooting. We've always been shooting. And he's like, why don't we can't find like 9mm ammo. There was an ammo shortage at this time. He's like, why don't we just make it in the garage? I was like, yeah, you know what? Let's give it a go.
So what caused the ammo shortage? War?
I have no idea, actually. No. We just noticed that it was harder and it was more expensive to purchase it.
And was that just by you guys going out and saying, hey,
it's more expensive
this shit's
at the
hard.
Range. Yeah.
We're going to the range. We saw it dropped up $10 a box or something, and now
we noticed a significant increase
going on here,
or we couldn't find 22s and lots of things like that. So
and then so you guys said, hey. Fuck it.
It can't be that hard, right? There's only 4 pieces that are an ingredient in this. So, so that's what we did. I guess we stopped deciding to do things that we were both good at. He was a chef, and I was in banking.
Well, I assume if you're putting together a bullet, it has some ingredients,
recipe, right?
That you got to make sure you don't do too much. So
we actually called them recipes. Because of Mike on that. So when we were storing all of our load data, it was all recipes.
So you guys noticed by going out, enjoying the sport of shooting, noticed that there's something going on, and you guys said, hey, let's just try it.
So then we created the company Loading Republic in my garage.
Wow. Just like an Apple store in Google, right in your garage.
Much, right in the garage. So by the time we had 5 machines, 5 like hand cranks.
So and I've seen them before. Machines, so you've had 5 hand cranks to make these. What were you making? 308s?
Oh, it was 9mm, 45, 40, and 308.
And so with these, 2 people at the time starting. Yep. How many were you cranking out?
We're doing thousands a week in those.
And that doesn't sound like, because you and I have been shooting before. Yeah. You could easily go through 1,000 rounds in 30 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. So 1,000 a week. At some point, you guys had to tell yourself, okay, this is not scalable with us doing this. We gotta get it to the scale.
At that point, that's when we moved up to Concord, and full on everything is ATF paperwork and all of that, fire department. Everybody knows where we are, where we're at, and we went from 4 machines from my garage to 9 or 10.
And before we get there, because I also want to touch, because we had lunch last week, I want to touch on the jurisdiction, because that was I found that very interesting. Before we get there, though, when you guys were creating these, and in my opinion, you can't go in right now to your garage, start making a couple boxes, and expect to just sell them like this. You know, so how was that process of, okay, we can create these. Where and who are we going to sell these through? So, Facebook Market, like where and who are we going to sell?
That was the fun, right? So here we are designing and then shooting and designing and shooting and handing out samples to our friends for them to say, hey, like, let us know how this worked, kind of
so
deal.
So you were having your friends beta test.
Yeah.
And your friends were probably very good, shooters.
They're fun, but they all got, like, the funny thing with ammo testing is you're like, I've got a lot of ammo. I got to go and shoot. And everybody's like, oh, if you need help shooting ammo, like, give me a call. I'm like, well, when I hand you this, like, stack of paperwork that you got to tell me how these, like,
they're like, no, I just want to shoot.
Yeah. It's like, we need to know the failure rate and all of that.
So you're giving them a checkbox.
We're giving them a checklist.
And they're shooting a certain rounds, and then they're going back and checking these boxes, so you guys can take that data and say, okay, this is how we need to tweak this.
Yep. And in what firearm platform too, right? Because like
weather,
one bad 9mm is just going to screw it for all of them, right? And everybody makes a gun a little bit differently.
Interesting. So when you're going back, I mean, like you said, there's only a couple ingredients basically. How are you going back and tweaking this? Like, is it less gunpowder? Like what?
So this is the fun part, right? You can tweak the weight of the projectile to get what you're looking for, and it's more easy.
And I'm sure
that's done more on rifles than it is on handguns.
Oh, I'm sure just by a tiny bit, it changes everything.
It does. It depends on the material that you use too, for how it flies through the air. You have coefficients of frictional force. So there's lots of math that go with it.
Oh, wow.
So it changes on what you're playing with.
Unbelievable.
It's more, those changes are more pertinent to higher caliber rifles, not so much on handguns, because you're not really going for extreme accuracy at very long
handguns
distance.
Handguns are more close range than an AR-15 or a rifle. You're talking farther.
Yeah, so we had our friends test it, and then those that loved it and show them around, and then we had orders through word of mouth that way. And
so you were start building the orders by word of mouth. They were testing it, and then they were like, okay, I like this.
People were loving it,
and you're like, okay,
you're getting slow little momentous growth, and then from there it's like, okay, well, we have a decision to make right now. It's time to incur overhead. And grow. So that's what we did.
So then you moved your facility because you guys had so much. You're like, hey, we can't do this just both of us in a garage. We need to start hiring employees. We need to start hiring.
Well, actually, we didn't hire any employees. It still kept Mike and I. What we did is we
got automatic machines.
We automated. So that's what I did. I turned those hand cranks into chain-driven machines. So we were building them out. So then all you got to do is kind of feed the machines.
So really just one person can watch over 1,000 rounds a day or something.
2 or 3, and then Mike and I would take turns, right? Like somebody would load and somebody would QC. So everything would get QC'd, and then at that point we would randomly test 10% of what we were loading to in each lot.
Got it. Before we get to that, though, one thing that I found very interesting was you guys moved your facility to Concord, and you said the zoning, because you guys were testing, firearms and bullets and things like that. Talk to us a little bit about like the zoning, because a lot of people may not even know this.
So here's kind of one of my favorite things. I know everybody bags on the government and regulations and things like that. However, the great thing about the government is that they're afraid of you. And they literally have a list of the things you cannot do because this is what they're afraid of. And as long as you follow those, you are fine. Yeah. So knowing where to look that up was while we're trying to figure out where we're going to place our FFL. And we weren't really making firearms. We were only doing ammunition, so we needed somewhere that's zoned for explosives.
So only ammunition at this time?
Only ammunition at this time.
Got it.
Only the ammunition. With that, we needed to find a place for zoning for
high explosives.
Low explosives. Because we're a low explosive.
Low explosives, got it.
So we're looking in
high explosive would be gasoline,
test fuel, even even some Semtex and high-end explosives are on those ends too. But gunpowder is a solid state fuel. It's very, very low. In fact, a
lot of people
distilleries are higher on that list than we are.
Breweries and
Distilleries,
or
not a
hard
brewery,
liquor.
hard liquor.
Hard liquor, because I remember our conversation. You guys had a location, and you said that another distillery, hard liquor, wanted to go in beneath
Below
you guys,
us,
and you're like, hell no, because if they explode, everything's going up.
Yeah, even the ATF's like, no, you're not staying here.
So a lot of people don't know that the gunpowder and bullets are actually low, and then distilleries that are doing high liquor, because they have that compressed, in those chambers,
it
could possibly. I mean, it's happened before in life, explode.
So that's why we picked Concord. One, it's kind of a small, cute little town, and it's growing. And two, it's zoned for explosives, the whole city. So we kind of slide right on in there, since it's NASCAR and everybody's concerned about gasoline and those high ends. Like, we just kind of fit right in.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And so you guys now have a physical location. You've designed and now you're automating the machines to go ahead and crank out more, but with less overhead of payroll. Yeah. And walk us through that next step that you guys really start going for.
So the facility that we were in had no air conditioning, and we were in 3,000 square foot facility at the top in a brick building. It was great because I loved it. However, no AC.
I mean, humidity, especially this summer, 104, 105 degrees here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And humidity is what kills your gunpowder, because you actually need to load more gunpowder if it's humid out when you're loading it than when it's drier. So
say that one more time.
So when you're trying to save pennies, if you're loading gunpowder in a humid environment, you actually need to load more to get the same effect, rather than when it's cool and not so humid.
So it's not good to load outside in Florida.
No, I would not recommend it. So at that point, we're trying to figure out how to
could
cut
that
even more
could that
overhead.
impact? Say you load, because you are in Florida outside and you're loading, extra. Could that impact it if you're shooting it in another state that has low humidity?
No, because it's all trapped, right?
Got it.
Once
So
you
it's all
seal it,
still
once
combined.
the bullet is all put together, it's actually called a round of ammunition. So once you have the primer and the brass, the powder, and then the projectile sealed in there, it's a round of ammunition, and it's literally considered inert. I mean, the U.S. military drops it from airplanes all day long.
And boom.
Yeah, for the ground. So,
wow.
So it's its own little trapped force at that point.
So you guys
whatever
had to
you load it as, it's stuck.
It's already in there. Yeah. Got it. And so you guys had a 3,000 square foot, no AC, and so.
So then we we realized that we were never going to cut our physical labor costs, and we're trying to shave pennies off of pennies already. And then we figured out that we could save more money by refrigerating all of the loading machines and loading the powder in there. So that's exactly what we did. Is we built from military refrigerating units, built a little refrigeration over the loading tables and bays.
Did you guys come in looking like Eskimos?
Pretty much. It went from almost like Walter White, where we're in boots and aprons, loading, sweating, to was it David Lopan in Blade Runner, where you got the little heated jacket and you're going in there in gloves
with hand warmers. you know. Oh wow!
So seeing all of those progressions was a lot of fun, and at that point we were loading, I think it was 12 or 14 different calibers, and then 2 or 3 different projectiles per caliber. So 9mm, we were loading 115 grain, 124, and 147 grains.
And when you let's dive a little deeper into
the projectile weight.
So the weight
of the bullet.
Itself.
115, 124, and 147. So it's 3 different ones, so that's 3 different powder charges for each one, so you really have to dial in at each time. Which caliber and projectile you're using.
Wow, very interesting. And talk to us about, the heavier to the lighter. Obviously, lighter is going to travel.
It does.
Faster?
It depends on kind of what you're looking for, right? Usually the 147 grains, which are kind of my favorite in the 9s, are subsonic, so they're designed for suppressors. It's easier shooting round. There's not so much muzzle climb, and I just kind of like it better.
Yeah, interesting.
So each one has their
own
pluses
style.
and minuses, right? There's not a perfect caliber or bullet, period, right? It's a range.
So when it comes to expanding, what you guys were manufacturing, you guys did market research on that, or you did it the old school way of
so what happened
was
as we're loading, and we're just doing the common round. So it was like a 380, 9mm, 40, 10mm, 45, 357 Magnum, 38 Special, 300 Blackout, 308, and 556, and 45 ACP. So like kind of the typical things you would see everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's just what we were loading. And we were getting to the point where everybody's like, oh, these are great. We love your rounds. We're buying these. And they're asking us for other things. Like, can you make rifles? Can you make handguns?
So you got,
can you get like, can you do this? Can you do that?
So you have your clients saying, we love your product, but hey, do you offer this? Do you do this?
Do this?
Can you do this?
Yeah. Then they're asking.
So you guys are saying, like, okay, there's a market for this.
And at first we're a little upset. Like we're like, that it's really different making a firearm than it is making bullets. Like we make the gasoline, not the car kind of deal. And then one of our really good mentors, Pat, was like, look, he's like, don't get irritated. He's like, this is the deal. He's like, whenever anybody's asking for something, he's like, the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. He's like, come to me. He's like, and we'll figure out how to get it to a yes.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. Is like, can you get us this? So that's what we started
and they said,
doing on those.
You said yes.
And then that's how we got into body armor and med kits and all of that. Like, can you make this?
So let's talk about the rifles for a second. What was that process like? I mean, you got different machines. That's a whole different.
So I didn't start in making any of those rifles ourselves until Loading Republic was bought out by another company and that we work for. So just on the Loading Republic side, what I do is we would work with standard AR companies and like head down.
Yep.
And build out weapons that way, and have somebody else who is already making them make them for us, and then
boom, you guys supply it.
Yep.
Got
on
it.
that end.
And
so that's how we did firearms, but like med kits and body armor, we actually made in-house.
And how is that? I mean, how is that process?
Oh, that was interesting. We shot so many things that's like bullet resistant.
Well, you got to test them.
Yeah, tons of videos and tons of figuring out kind of layering and weight and all of that. So we just did our own research, kind of, rolled up our sleeves.
I mean, because the goal with body armor, especially with our wonderful veterans and our wonderful active military personnel, is that obviously you want the lightest but the strongest.
Yeah.
Because you have that vest on plus a vest with all your ammunition on, and you're walking for days in some cases, you know, and so you have to be able to hold all that material. And so the lighter but the stronger is the best.
And we like repeatable shots too, right? So it can
stand, boom, boom, boom.
It can withstand a lot.
But multiple shots in the same location.
But that was the thing we realized pretty quickly on is we're reading through like how these plates are certified, and once again, it's knowing your research. We realized that body armor was never designed to save your life. It was only designed to stop you from bleeding out inside of 4 hours. So that's when we're like, okay. So we're looking at how do we catch the bullet, and kind of
how do you
different
absorb
things
all that?
On there. If it's not exactly designed for that, what can we do a little bit differently?
Yeah, most definitely. Wow, that's very, very, very interesting. So you got into med kits, got into the body armor, and then where did it progress from there?
So this is, I think, 4 years in. It's like 2017, 2018. Okay. My business partner, he was kind of looking for a change. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, I'll bought Mike out. And then I was like, I can't run this on my own. So I kind of like, maybe the company's for sale, maybe it's not. And then I get a reach out from one of my Mason brothers who's like, hey, you still interested in, continuing your company? He's like, I know somebody who'd be interested, and they're going to want you to join on. And I'm like, why not? Why not?
Let's hear it out.
Let's see what goes. See what goes.
What are the options?
So that's what I did. I sat and met with him. Turned out it was Blackwater. So we went from joining like our own family of what we're doing to like this huge international scaled family of business. So from going from what they liked what we were doing and then wanted to create back American manufactured side, and that's one of the big things with them is they love American manufacturing, like huge patriots and huge on the American side of keeping it at home. So that's what we became. We started doing imports and exports, so now much larger draws of components around the world for ammunition, as well as we had 4 loading locations around the planet.
Wow.
And then figuring out all of that paperwork was then now put onto my plate. So I did do the designing at times and the pressing, and then those all under contracts along with the guns. But other than that, it's moving materials and vehicles and all of that
shipping
around the world and following all of that paperwork. So learning how to do the government side, so what's called ITAR brokerage and manufacturing.
And that's what I was going to dive into. I mean, we've all seen the movie War Dogs, you know, which is wild scene.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that there's government websites for you to bid on government jobs.
Yeah.
You know, how does that whole world work?
So I know we did only a few of those bids, and it was like for Rothko pouches, but like you have to be really up on knowing where your products are, knowing how fast you can get them, how much they weigh, and how much you can make off of it, and bid in the appropriate way for that.
Yeah. Because there are, I mean, I've looked at them before. The forms are like, you got to go through a lot of steps to bid. You can't just go and it's like eBay where you make an account and you bid.
Yeah, no, it's down to, hey, we will ship it by FedEx from this day
overnight.
to that. Like, you're going to get it on this day within like 45 days kind of deals. Usually how that runs.
I hope you're enjoying today's episode. Just a quick reminder to make sure you never miss an episode. Stay connected with us by following us on social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, TikTok at Chris_Salerno_. And don't forget to subscribe to YouTube to catch the video versions of our episode. You'll get exclusive content, behind-the-scenes footage, and much more. Head over to YouTube, Chris_Salerno now, and hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned because we've got more great content coming right after this.
So yeah, you get to do some of that, but other than that, like they had their own clientele list too of things that they were already involved in that we just helped and facilitate, right? Like, so it's all paperwork.
Yeah.
And once again, like the government gives you these lists, and it's really not hard, right? Like the forms for the like the State Department are really not as bad as everybody thinks. It's actually very straightforward. And they're looking for very straightforward things like these are the people involved. This is what we're moving, yes or no kind of deal. This is what we're making on it.
Did you guys have to have certain type of clearance, things like that? Because of what you guys were handling?
Not for all of that stuff, but for our own internal things, yeah. Like on that end, absolutely.
And I assume, I mean, when you're transporting certain type of items, like you're gonna have to have a security team or something watching.
Absolutely, and that's all part of the logistics and the shipping on those ends. Right?
Yeah, it's making sure basically the president of the United States is taken care of. Like this load is taken care of.
Yep. And then you run into weird, kooky things like one of them Southeast Asian countries were supplying the police, and then the customs were holding the ammo from the police, and we're like, no, guys, you can't really do that.
Really?
Like, it's already in the
tell us some
contract.
crazy stories that you can speak of,
man.
that you've ran through that would just shock us.
God, I mean, there's actually so many. I would say the really horrible ones are the ones that from the withdrawal of Afghanistan, how the U.S. kind of botched that horribly. And then you can see us in the news trying to save people on that end. And then we got told to cease and desist.
Really?
But the emails, the phone calls, the letters were just like heartbreaking. That was a really difficult time for us.
Really?
Like emotionally and everything. It still brings me up to tears where like people are writing you saying, I know I'm not going to survive this, but my daughter and wife need to be saved.
Wow.
So like, yeah. So it gets intense on those issues at times because a lot of times like what that company did a lot of good around the world. And that's always glossed over for some of the bad things that happened or wartime issues.
Even, I mean, any company that is dealing in firearms or that type of logistics type of, type of merchandise, they're always going to see it in a negative, negative aspect from the government eyes, or certain parts of the government, I should say, but if you really look at it as a whole, it's going to be very good. I mean, I just commented on a gentleman's post, and he was talking about how AI is taking all these jobs, and I said, well, how many jobs are AI creating?
Yeah.
You got to factor that into it as well.
And
So
you're right,
I'm sure they're doing
even
phenomenal.
Looking at like the firearms industry, and I hate to harp on the 2A thing, but like after that 1994 ban was up in 2004, you see how many huge industries pop up around firearms. So now you have like those customization houses, and that's one of the sister companies I work with currently. We'll get to that, like with Cerakoting and stippling and all of these other ancillary companies just pop up out of nowhere to help in the firearm industry. And it's kind of amazing, but none of those existed when that ban, was in place.
And was that ban in place to make sure that it was harder for them to pop up?
I have no idea. I think it was just a political thing.
That they wanted to put in place.
Yeah, I remember I joined in on all of this in like 2013. So like when it was 2004, I didn't really have much to do with any of this.
Yeah, very interesting. So scaling, did you scale into any very large, like?
Yeah, I'm
talking like, I'll never forget you're saying with missiles and rockets. I'll always remember that. But did you scale into anything like that large?
So there's lots of things we scaled into. There was a tremendous amount of projects that we were in and out of. Like that's the one thing with that company, is that it's always forward thinking. So yes, we bought a firearms company out in Utah, and we had to scale them pretty much from the garage on up to a factory.
Really?
So, and then with that, what's really good about Blackwater is that they look at things as a team effort, right? So not just the companies that we bought or we owned, it's the suppliers too, right? And that was where we got into banking and all the other things to it too, because we looked at our credit card processors as our partners as well. So you guys are having trouble, how can we fix? Or the company that's supplying the uppers and lowers that are actually making it for the firearms to be put together, they're having a problem on supplying us what we need. And it has to do with their process. So at that time, we finally got to talk to them and then literally go in, work every single job and figure out how to create their process quicker. And we would always go and do that. And about 20-30% proficiency when we left, and then that cleans up their process, which cleans up our process. Yeah, and that's exactly how we looked at things.
They see things as a team, and that's how you should see it at the end of the day.
Because you're right. Like even though they're not on your payroll, they're technically on your payroll, right?
Yeah.
And that was the same thing with, like I said, the credit card processing was always an interesting one too, because no banks really liked what we did, right? You're always kind of getting money held and things like that. So we partnered with a great credit card company processor that did what we had, but they also had their own problems with risk control and self-assessment.
Sure.
So at that part, they had a whole bunch of salesmen and not so many risk guys, and so they needed help, and then we figured that out, and I stepped in and started doing RCSA and banking stuff for all the risk compliance to help clean up all of those. So it's back to banking once again. And then dealing with those protocols overseas as well is kind of really interesting.
Wow.
So it's not just
talk to us about some of your travel, because you've traveled overseas
everywhere.
And how has that industry been for you with traveling, things like that?
It's really interesting. Actually, I just like to travel in general. So, and I'm antsy when I'm there. I don't like to just stay in the hotel. So I'll walk around wherever we're at and check out the city. I always like to do that. But spent a decade traveling. So South Korea, Indonesia. Wow. We've got some of the stands, Poland, Germany, Italy, Malta, North Africa, South Africa.
You've been at all.
South America, So kind of all over.
Yeah, most definitely. So, graduating with that company and then deciding to say, hey, I'm going to wrap things up and sell my portion. What was that like? What was that mentality like?
So with them, they're great individuals, and you're either 100% in or you're 100% out. Mm-hmm. Right, there's no in between, and that is 100% respectful.
Yeah,
right?
and you need to be,
because you are. It's a 24/7 job. Yeah. It really is. And we're operating in over 100 countries and like 6 or 7 time zones. Yeah. So like it is a lot for the handful of people that were doing it. I was going through a major life change at that time and just kind of wanted to refocus everything. So I, said my goodbyes and sold my portion, and then kind of puttered around and been consulting for the past 2022, so 3 years. Nice. I've been doing banking and some fun projects here and there. Oh, yeah. And then I started, that's what I said, my sister company, Red 5 Works. They're a Cerakoting company. Mm-hmm. And so
talk to us about that. What's Cerakoting?
It's a paint for usually used for firearms.
Got it. So you're coating firearms.
Yep, and personalizing them. Once again, it's one of those industries that popped up after, when people start realizing Call of Duty and you can customize your guns,
different colors, things like that. Why can't we do it with our own?
Yep. Oh. So they do that, but they're more than that. They like engines. So I'm trying to help them focus and expand, right? Mm-hmm. So they do ancillary companies too. So like they have a deal with Wooks, and that's an axe and stock company, and a knife company. So we do their lasering and painting the blades. There's a firearm company here, Engstad, that they paint for too, and then a bunch of like hot rod shops actually. So
really?
Yeah, I know. I didn't realize that Cerakote could be used for like a 1957
Chopper.
Thunderbird. Like Thunderbird frame.
Wow.
And same with the drive shaft. So lots of cool things there. And then there's a guy who has his blue BMW, his engine manifold was painted by us to match the car, right?
Interesting.
So there's tons of things. We even have a BMX racer, so it's kind of a lot of fun. You can see with that stuff. And then I know we can Cerakote golf clubs, so we're going to start playing with that and just putting them back together where they're perfectly balanced is kind of that issue.
Oh, yeah.
Figuring that out. So they have all of this customization that they can do in-house.
I love that.
And then on the side of that, I guess I'm a glutton for punishment and wanted to start another ammunition company. So.
I was going to say, let's talk about it. I love the name. I love the logo, Ghost Ammo Company. And I know you've told me, but tell everyone, what was that thought process on coming up with the logo, the design, the name?
So I'm a big history fan. Love, especially military history, of course, on that. So World War II had a really interesting fake army, the Ghost Army of World War II. And their job was to con or deceive the Germans in like 3 methods. It's sonic, visual, and radio. So they're what they realized is they need to fool the Germans on communications to make it seem like there's 30,000 men in this one area. Mm-hmm. So these guys studied the radio communications of all of their units and so you could see how many radio messages per man kind of deal for an area and a unit, and they mathematically laid that out and then had to sit in a field and literally paint that canvas for deceit. And then other guys are recording like just the sounds of troop movements and trucks and machines and literally putting out speakers in a field and playing that so they can hear it over distance. It's like, sounds like there's 30,000 men over there. Radio sounds like there's 30,000 men over there because their metadata, even though they can't read it, is like, okay, there's got to be that. So let's send a flyby and see if we can get visual on there. And then they had inflatable tanks, inflatable people, inflatable airplanes.
So they were really using their smarts to outsmart them.
And they hired like artists and magicians and really cool things to kind of fool the Germans, especially at night. On England is where they started it. So they would use the British farmland to make it look like streets of London at night with lights and all that. So hopefully Luftwaffe would bomb that instead of London.
Who was the individual behind that thought process?
There's actually a few. We're kind of portraying the story on the website, which is still being built. So
Cool.
kind of let us dig a little more into that history, and we'll tell it that way. But
Wow.
I loved their premise, and I loved their logos because they had a lot. So it's a lot of history you can play with. And Ghost for an ammunition company seems to be like a lot of fun, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's so many things you can play off, and actually that's kind of what we're doing now. So like we're a very small ammunition loading company. We don't do like lots and lots. We do small projects. So the 2 projects we have running currently are for 9mm. Actually, we have 3 projects running. The 9mm project one is a subsonic 147 grain, and it's designed specifically for like MP5 and PCC pistol carbine length firearms that are suppressed. So it's optimized for that round, for that gun, which is kind of ghosty in itself, right? So super silent and hearing safe inside your room.
Do you have to vet who you're manufacturing for?
No. But like at any point in time, like, you know, because we're so small, we can say yes or no for anything.
Yeah.
And even when I was loading back in the day for large and small, we still had the ability to say yes or no. Like, no, I don't really like what I think you're going to do. So the answer is no.
Yeah.
So you can always.
And that's good. And you have great morals. You have phenomenal characteristics. You know, I think that's super important where you get that sense and you're like, yeah, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah. And so we're playing with that. And then, so 147 grain subs. The other 9mm is actually kind of a funny prepper one. So we got a friend who he wants silver bullets. So
interesting.
Literally, we're once again the 147 grain comes back into play. So we're actually melting pure silver into 147 grains, and 3 of those equals 1.008 of an ounce of silver. So it's like 3 rounds is an ounce of silver. So playing that out is actually kind of cool. So we're doing 3-round packages for them, and it's only like a few thousand rounds, but it's really interesting because silver reacts pretty much like a solid lead round in the air.
Interesting.
So the ballistics are fairly similar. It's as close as it can be.
And when you're testing these, do you have like a slow-mo camera?
Sometimes we do. Depends upon, you know,
what you're...
originally, yeah. And then actually you say way back in the day, back in like 2014, Mike and I literally like video camera and then that graphic board, the white and black, so we could time it as you're going across and measuring it, like really old school.
Wow.
With a chronograph and that to test it into a bullet trap. So yeah, I've done the fun stuff that way. But,
that's unbelievable.
But now, especially with the silver, we want to look for expansion of the hollow tip, but it goes into ballistic gel because we remelt it and use it since it's not inexpensive, right?
Wow.
On that.
So when you brought up earlier, you test 10%, and is that normal? The normal number, you know, minimum 10% of the rounds you're doing just to make sure they're good.
Lots of companies do anywhere between 3 to 5%, because there's usually a failure rate anyway in there. Like look at cars, right? You can have
something's gonna go wrong. Yeah. You'll have a dud, or something.
Yeah. So I like to test more because I like a little bit of overrun too. So like, let's just say it's not the real number, but let's say we're doing 5,000 rounds of 147 grain for one customer. And it's not a lot, but we'll order 6,000, right? So that way we can test around 500 to 600 rounds to make sure that it works properly. And then we'll have a few extra, and then it's the overage that we'll sell on the website from that. So
let me know if you need any testing people.
Gotcha. I got a list for you to check off.
I'll check off your list. We need to go shooting. I haven't been in a while. Last time was with you actually, so we need to get back out there. Definitely would love to be an ammo tester, depending on how long that list is. I got to check. But no, that's extremely interesting when it comes to it. So right now, which I love your guys' stuff, you also selling merchandise too. Talk to us about that.
So along with the ammo side, because realize that running solely an ammo company is not
profitable.
It's just not, but it's something that I love to do. So getting back to the design and all of that is a lot of fun. But on that same process, we then get to create hats, T-shirts, stickers, and all that fun little tchotchke stuff that goes along with it. So now we have a tremendous amount of history to play from and then put them out there. So we'll change some of them. But we love the slogan, deceit forward kind of deal. So look out for stickers, patches, shirts, hats. And you had Corey on here
Yeah, I love
recently.
Corey.
And yeah, he's another sister company of ours, and we're going to have wallets and ashtrays and more things like that. So
yeah. Donald Trump Jr. actually buys a lot of stuff from Corey. I didn't know that. I was talking I was talking to Corey about it because I was like, yo, because we did the podcast, tagged him in some things. And I was like, yo, you got Donald Trump Jr. like following you. And he goes, oh yeah, he buys some knives and some wallets from us. And I was like, that's pretty damn neat.
We gave him one of our shotguns, a Century 12 shotgun, actually, at
Really?
the NRA convention long back ago. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's I saw that and I was like, nice, man. I love what he's doing with the design. It's really sleek, really cool.
He's and that's the key, right, to growing your business these days is to have really great people around you that are doing really interesting things.
Talk to us about that. You know, you and I met unannounced at a lunch that we both went to give advice to someone, and you and I hit it off very well. You know, talk to us about through your experiences through, you know, banking, consulting, multiple businesses that you bought and sold, some failures as well, you know, having that strong group and those strong business partners around you.
Yeah. And, you know, failure's just a part of life, right? The old adage is I don't have to win every time. I just have to win the right times.
I love that.
And that's the same with business. So in like everything in life, like people come and go in cycles, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, useful people at a time. And then when partnerships stop being fluid and communication breaks down, it just happens with people through time at times.
I love that saying. You don't have to win every time. You just have to win at the right time.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Not every idea is going to be a home run, but, you know, like one or two is all you really need.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And it's super important to surround yourself with those individuals. And you and I, you know, we grab cigars normally on Tuesdays because you also have two beautiful children. Three, sorry. Three beautiful children growing up substantially fast. And Tuesdays are our time that we both can
as
connect.
A single dad get
we're both singles dads. So Tuesday nights at the cigar lounge, and we talk business, we talk family. You know, the first thing we do is, hey, how are you? How are the kids? We really understand that, and then we bounce ideas off of each other because you and I both have a ton of ideas. Not all ideas, you know, make sense.
Nope.
You always have to bounce them off, but it's good that you're getting your mind thinking and processing and working.
And that's what I'll say is great about the private sector in general, right? Is you're never looking at trying to pigeonhole yourself. You're always looking at how can I expand my portfolio.
Correct.
And right, like I said, like ammunition design, that's not going to get you really anywhere.
Yeah.
On that. But like the ancillaries, right? Like since I know how to deal with the State Department on airframe transfers, that's a translatable skill. And same with the banking regulations, especially in risk.
Yeah, most
so
definitely.
Like those are fun to focus on and play on. And you know, anytime you're dealing in a risky situation, whether it's manufacturing or banking, like it's actually very creative. Right?
Oh, I bet.
Like you have to have a process and you have to have an end goal and you have to get how many moving parts to work together.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, let's talk about banking right now. Yesterday was not a good day for a lot of people. A lot of people, especially your billionaires, dropped a lot in net worth given the current market environment. I haven't checked the market as of this morning, but I'm sure it's the same way, and I'm sure it's going to be this way until we have this election. You know, where do you see things with the banking industry as an overall, not just direct, but as an overall, with those interest rates rising, with the current market environment that we've seen over the weekend and this week and forthcoming? You know, what do you feel, you know, with your expertise that may happen?
That's a tough one, right? So banks are either going to have to go one of two ways, right? They're going to have to either look at, you know, the federal government to save their ass again,
which they will,
or they're going to have to start looking at the people that their customers and being like, how can we benefit these people a little bit better, right? And it's always an interesting way to look at banking, because at one point I wanted to actually do a defense bank, right, where we only dealt with defense, 2A industries, medical marijuana, and porn, right? All of the people that have really huge troubles of getting money into banks.
Wow.
And we were going to back it through FDIC and through gold, and got absolutely nowhere. Like all the banking regulations are like, no, you cannot do that at all. Forget you. You're never going to get past. So like it's interesting how they kind of group together to kind of push others out. But
Yeah.
I think there's a tipping point for sure coming around the end. And either it's an election change or the banks themselves will realize that maybe, overcharging people or giving out a little bit more is more beneficial to attracting more people for their bottom line.
Yeah, most definitely. I think something's definitely going to change, especially given the current market environment. There's word on the street. Feds are, having emergency meetings, this week to possibly cut rates even more. It's going to be shocking if they do, because we're set to hear a rate cut in September. But, if they have this meeting and decide to cut it before September, I think what's going to really happen.
That have?
I think what's definitely going to happen, and this is from my experience of the single family brokerage industry, is the pricing of housing is going to skyrocket up
Again?
substantially, because we still have a huge supply and demand issue. And if you look, I always tell people, and I said this on the last podcast, go to your local city and see how many people have pulled permits to develop multifamily. In Q1 of this year, and here in Charlotte, there was only 2 permits. Yeah. So that tells you a huge slowdown.
Yeah,
now the permits have probably increased now, because we all know interest rates are going to go down. But the biggest issue is that when that supply rebounds, what's going to happen? In my opinion, that supply is going to rebound. All these developers are going to need to lease up their units, so the price is going to shoot down to rent. And then people are going to say, well, it's cheaper to rent. I'm going to go rent and not buy. And then that's going to shoot down the price of
You're
homes.
not wrong. Like, it's crazy. Like, I always kind of look at my life on how can I cut my burn rate, my monthly burn rate down, right? So, like, I don't like erroneous debt, but, like, seeing people who have, like, apartments that they're renting and their rent is almost double my mortgage is insane.
Oh, I mean, Stephanie and I were just talking. I mean, not naming anyone's names, but there's someone that we looked at, and it's like close to $15,000 a month in the rent. And I was like, that's just in your rent. That's not including your other lifestyles.
Water, that's not anything.
Not water. Your other lifestyles, your things you do on a daily basis. Your business expense. And I'm like, you're probably spending $70,000 to $80,000, probably $100,000 a month just on your basic needs of running your business. And don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of corporations spend more than that, but it's like, you don't look like you are bringing that much in. So, what's going on here?
Yeah, there's always that weird tipping point, right? You're always trying to figure out how the hell are they living this way?
I mean, because when you have that and then you calculate, okay, let's just say on average you're paying your 8 to 9 associates $80,000 a year on average, which you have to be paying them more on average. But just when you do that, I mean, you're talking $1 million or close to $1 million just in payroll.
Yeah.
And then that's not even including any other expense. I'm like, you're $2 to $3 million just in expenses.
Yeah, I want to say just our salaries were 90, 80 grand a month for everybody. As a burn rate, and that doesn't include the overhead of the business at that point in time.
A lot of people don't realize, and I say this to everybody: if you can go buy a business, go buy a business, because they've already gotten most of the struggles away. Normally, you can go into a business and say there's about 4 or 5 things that really need to be changed. Number one, it's marketing. No, that's huge. With any business, they don't know how to market correctly. They don't have that professionalism. Then it's operations and systems. How can you tweak that?
Streamline it.
Correct. Personnel. Do you have to let certain people go? Things like that. And then cut your expenses down where that is just unnecessary expenses. But the biggest thing I found is marketing. I say if you want to start a business, go and see if you can buy that business first. That's the best thing, is go see if you can buy one that has already kind of been lifted off the ground. Go in there and put better systems, operation, marketing, and then grow it. Because starting it from scratch, it takes minimum 1 year for research and things like that, getting all the pieces of the puzzle just to put together before you start making the picture. Like, it's a lot.
And also, like, you're expected to be an expert in absolutely everything.
And you got to do everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes I enjoy it. Like right now, I'm the model for the shirts. And the hats.
We talked about that, yeah.
And I was for the other stuff that we used to do too. For it, it's just kind of funny. You get used to having cheeky and catchy marketing, right, to talk to your audience, and that's crucial.
Oh, it's spot on. But yeah, if you can go buy a business, go buy a business and then take it to the next level, because creating it from scratch is the biggest headache there is. I'm telling you, that's the thing we will always do, is just buy.
Nobody will loan you money. Nobody can
see
the idea.
Banks won't do it. People are skeptical about the idea. It's harder to raise capital.
And that's always the funny thing, right? Like, everybody's always yelling, support your neighbors, support your friends, support local business, but they're more willing to go buy what Beyonce's perfume and support her over like $6 worth of like a $20 t-shirt, right?
100%
like, from your website. So it's really kind of interesting.
That's why I love marketing, because it taps into the mind on, why does someone do that? Why would they rather go buy Beyonce stuff than their local neighbor's product? Because it's Beyonce, she's famous, things like that. They feel it's a part of their, it's so interesting how the human mind operates when it comes to that. Yeah. How has you're running a phenomenal business that you just created with Ghost Ammo, sold multiple businesses prior, father of 3, how do you really dedicate? And I love it, because sometimes I'll text you and you're like, you're spending time with the kids. How have you really dedicated that time to making sure they grew up great character, professionalism, especially in this crazy world we live in?
It was a refocus of everything, right? Like, I had kids because I wanted to have kids, and I truly enjoy them for who they are and their uniqueness.
I love them.
And their craziness. So with some of the freedom that I have, like, I definitely have them at my place, and we'll go to the pool, and I can work remotely on those things, as well as go into the factory upon certain times of the day. Yeah. So I have that extra freedom, but it also allows me to keep the kids around me more. And that's what I chose to do, right? Like, I wanted to be around them. So, like, my eldest 2, even though my ex and I are amicable and our houses are very close, like, it's a 2-minute drive.
Love that.
So the kids can have access to either parent at any time. The 2 older ones just choose to live with me full time. Right?
Yeah, I love that.
So, and as you said, like, we forced the kids to have 2 nights a week, all of them together with either other parent. So, as you said, like, Tuesday night's my night off, Thursday night's hers, right? So,
So no matter who they choose to live with, those nights they know they're hanging out with dad or mom.
Yep. Yeah. That's theirs. Yeah. So, and then during the day, since it's summer and they're not in school, I kind of like to keep them with me, and then I'll work little half days or take the laptop with me and just spend the time with them.
No, I love that. And how do you think they'll follow in the footsteps of the ammunition, that world?
I don't know. I hope so. Like, I think.
I mean, you introduce firearms to them, and they know how to work them better than most adults.
Yeah. Well, it's once again, right. Education staves off ignorance, right, and fear. So, they've grown up with it, and I used to take. I actually still take my oldest to the factory whenever we go, and he's part and parcel of. He helps clean, he helps organize, like, he helps paint, like, so he's always on it. So
it's good to get him that type of hands-on type of labor, where that is really those common trades of electrical, plumbing, that hard type of labor is uncommon these days. I mean, it's mind-boggling when I hear some of these young kids and they're like, I need a day off. Like, I've worked so hard this week, and I'm scratching my head. So wait, what do you do? Oh, you're a server. Don't get me wrong. I served before, but I'm going to be a little different server because I'm willing to work 12-hour days, where most of these servers only work from like 4 to 10 at night, and then they're exhausted. And I'm like, no.
And wear a smile. And that's one of the reasons I like you too, right? You don't actually have that like young kid kind of vibe kind of deal, right? That. It's a more mature and older stance where it's like, we're focused on family and we're focused on business, and 100%. How can we work all of this together in a harmonious method, right? And that's that work-life balance, or, you always gotta kind of. It's a sliding scale. Right?
It is. It's a moving target, because sometimes you have to give up time with your kids to grow the business. And the way I do it is the business comes first, my son comes second. And some people will disagree with that, but I don't disagree, because how can I provide for my son if I don't have a business? Yeah. So I need to make sure my business is taken care of so I can provide the lifestyle for my son. I didn't grow up from a wealthy family. Definitely didn't. Remember shopping at the dollar store, and that's all we we could afford at the time. And so I realized very quickly, I need to make sure I get my business right so it can support my son and I. And, some people will disagree. Some people will say, no, family comes first. And I definitely, I understand your perspective of that. But if you don't have a business to support the family, how can you put your family first?
Well, I get it on those ends, but also it's showing your kids your business too, right?
Yeah.
And that's what my dad did, and I guess just show them your hobbies, and that's how it works together. Even Trump has that open door policy, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how it should be with every family, right? This is your education kind of deal. You get school, and then why don't you come and see how things work in the real world?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's, our kids seeing our work ethic, seeing our drive, that's something that they definitely don't see during school systems. Yeah. And I think it's super important to get them at a very young age exposed to that so they can grow up with the drive in our work ethic, because that is lacking in today's society, is that drive and work ethic. I mean, you got these kids going to school being taught by teachers that make 30 to 60,000, and these teachers are telling these kids, oh my God, if you make 80 to 100,000 a year, that's a lot of money. No, it's not a lot of money. I'll tell you that right now.
Barely enough to get you to start saving.
Correct. That is not a lot of money. You need to be surrounding yourself with individuals that are making 5, 10, 20, 50 million a year, and you will see that mindset change. And it's super important to expose children to the work ethic, the drive, the motivation at a young age, so they grow up with that type of characteristic, in my opinion. Other people will disagree. Cool. That's your opinion. You can disagree. That's what I think. So
it's also a mindset, and that's
100%.
The same thing with the people that I the family of businesses and people that I keep around me, right? We all have the same mindset, and it's that can-do attitude, right? Correct. There's never really a no. There's
and even if we don't want to do it, we're not even gonna say we don't want to do it. Yeah. We're gonna tell our mind, shut the fuck up and go do it. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's we had a good saying. It was nothing's impossible. Improbable and unlikely, maybe, but never impossible.
No, you can do if you have that right mindset, the dedication, the drive, the consistency, you'll get there. There's no doubt about it. Let's talk about your health. Health is super important to operate, with 3 kids, a single father, running doing another business that you're getting up and running at a substantially high level. How are you optimizing your health to make sure you can do this?
Man, so I've never been one that sleeps much. Yeah, brain's always running. So usually up around 4 or 5 in the morning. So at that point, you just use that energy, right? I'll do a quick workout and then get the coffee. And start kind of going through the list of what I've got to accomplish today, right? I always look at every single day as how can I be just 1% better, right? You can't fix every single problem in a day, but you can if you can fix one. Yeah. That's, and while you're still doing all of your other stuff. That's an incredible feat.
As a business owner, all you're going to be dealing with is problems. So as you get, as you keep scaling, that's really your whole day is problems, and how to fix these problems very quickly and correct and then understand, okay, I have 10 problems, 10 situations on my desk. Which one's the most important that I need to attack, get done right now? And then it goes down the list. But as an owner, you better have thick skin and you better have great customer service, because all you're going to deal with is problems.
Yep. And sometimes it moves at a snail's pace, right? So it'll go really, really slow and you have nothing to do, and then really, really fast. So
and when it goes slow, I tell myself, okay, let's go. I know you're coming. I'm prepared for you. I'm ready for those emails.
Me. And when it's going slow, that's when I start looking for other consulting gigs to keep my mind rolling. Right? Yeah. It's what projects can I pick up for a few months while I understand that this marketing takes time, and this takes time to hold on and get a name out.
Yeah, most definitely. No, most definitely.
Yeah, it's always a fun little balance, but I also like to keep my mind, active.
Keep it going. Yeah, keep it running. So working, how has dieting been?
So it's really funny. I don't diet at all. Yeah. I never have. I usually keep a fairly decent workout routine. I'll ruck a few miles in the morning, so it's about 35 pounds.
You eat fast food?
Yeah, every so often with the kids. But mostly it's sushi, steak.
That's not fast food.
I know. Well, usually, but yesterday we had hamburgers, right? So
where from?
Wayback Burger.
I've never heard of that.
Man, not trying to give them
where is
major
that?
props, but yeah, they're better than Five Guys.
Oh, see, I don't like Five Guys. I like Shake Shack. Shake Shack.
Oh, that was a good one.
Shake Shack's a really good one.
This one was in Mint Hill.
Mint Hill. You got to take I'm a foodie. I told you guys about the sushi place.
That was a great spot, by the way. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kids loved it.
I'm glad they did. You got to take them to Harriet's, and right here in Optimus Hall. Okay. So it's right here in Noda. Harriet's Burgers. They're old school. So when you walk in there, depending on where you walk in from, but when you get into it, they kind of have like the diner vibe. Okay. And like if you get Coca-Cola from them, it's called cane cola.
Oh, so you got like that because cane sugar?
Yeah, but they have cane sugar, and it's called cane cola. And they actually tastes totally different. I don't drink soda, but when I had a sip of it because I wanted to try it. Tastes totally different than Coca-Cola, but it's called cane cola, and it's like an old diner vibe. Their burgers, cool. You got to take them there.
All right, Harriet's. I always get stuck at like the dumpling lady. Like as you like walk right in, I'm like, oh,
those dumplings. That's a cool thing about Optimus Hall, and I think I'm seeing a lot of developers do that type of food hall where you can go in and you can get like 5 different things, or and then share.
It's that old Asian hawker station, like food hawkers, right? Yeah. Like it's a permanent building where you have different multiple companies. Vendors. Yeah, so you can go pick it out. Have you ever been to like Portland, Oregon? They have this whole section of food trucks. Okay. And it's like not the food trucks we think of them when they drive up and move around. These ones are literally
like station
fixed there. And so like there's a Middle Eastern section.
Oh, that's cool.
There's a fusion section. And it's kind of like the same thing, outside.
I love Optimus Hall, and the reason why is because the spaces are so small for these food joints, I'd call them, is that your occupancy is 100% all the time. Because if one leaves, you can easily fill that because it's small, it's narrow. You're already drawing that crowd.
Of foot traffic.
Correct. Right? You're already drawing that crowd as an owner of the building, and the name brand of the building. You're drawing that in there, and they're so small that you can lease these up. And when you go in there, it's 100% leased up. Yeah. No, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely think working out, staying on top of your health is super important, which you've been doing to operate at a very high level. I love what you're doing with Ghost Ammo. I think the branding, all of that's neat. So if you guys haven't, go ahead and go to their website, check it out. By the time this releases, you'll have a website up.
I hope so. We'll see.
This one probably will release in December or January of next year.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely have it.
You'll definitely have it. You'll definitely have it up and running. Excited to see what you guys do with that growth of Ghost Ammo, and it's super. I appreciate you coming on and joining us here, and excited to have you on in the near future as well. Once you have everything up and running at a very high pace. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chris Salerno Show. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insight to help you along your journey. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have any questions or topics that you would like to cover, feel free to reach out directly to me. Shoot me a message on Instagram at Chris_Salerno_. Until next time, keep pushing forward and stay inspired.